Hey everyone, it's been a while since I made a video, but as I said last time, life gets on top of you, so I don't actually have the time like I would like to just be able to get these videos done. But today we want to show you how to import your model from Sweet Home 3D into your 3D software, whether it be 3D Max, Blender, or whatever you prefer to use. But before we do that, I want to show you how to cut out these walls if that's the kind of look you're after. I call it the Sims look because in the Sims game, when you choose one of the options to view inside the home, you can it will look like this just to see through, which I find is more elegant and more sense because of the angle that you're looking through. You want to be able to see the objects behind. So while we do that, I want to start with how I achieved it by open up your 3D program, and we'll start off with a box. Doesn't matter the size or anything like that. We're just worried about the material that we're going to add to it. So after making a box, open up your material editor. Then we are going to apply that to the box. Then we want to go opacity and change that to 0 so it's completely invisible. So now that we've done that, we'll go to export. Depending on your software, the same process would be similar. So here I'm going to do export selected and navigate to where your project is located, which I'll do to Sweet Home 3D Floor Plan Shoot. And we're going to make this a OBJ. There we go, OBJ, and I'm going to call this invisible window. You can name it whatever you want, but that just seems pretty much explanatory to me. So we'll save that. Keep everything the same. Not too worried about that. Done. Now open up your Sweet Home 3D. And what we're going to do, this is a floor plan I made in between from the last video to now, just to be able to show you from start to finish how we go about making a floor plan look like the one that I got on my Home Assistant. It's a very basic layout. I was just quickly chucking in things. Get as much furniture and material that you can in before you do your export. Just makes life easier down the track. And then what we want to do, so you want to pick out where your angle is going to be or how you want your view to look in Home Assistant. Let's say I'm going to choose this angle. So I want the walls cut out from all inside here. So to do that, I'm going to zoom out first. Then what we do, furniture, import furniture, and we're going to choose a model. And here I want to do my invisible wall, OBJ. Click continue, continue, and we are going to make this a door or a window. Keep proportions and everything else can stay the same. So we continue that again. Finish. And as we add, what we'll do, just want to check to see, actually, it will just, as you click finish, it will add it into your floor plan. So what we can do is scroll it over and put it to where you want your walls to start cutting. So we'll start there. As you can see, it's got the cut out there. All right, so let's go zoom in a bit. And, damn it, control Then we are going to drag this down all the way to the end. And as you can see, it's cut out all the way down along the bottom. Now, as we double click, we can actually just fine tune these parameters. And we'll start with the elevation, and I'll go probably 35. So that brings it up 35. And then we're going to go depth, and I'm going to start with 250. And we're going to change the height in a sec as well. I just want to see the results of this. And as you can see, it's already started cutting and it's going backwards. So go back in, fine tune again, and we're going to change the height to, we'll say 300, and depth to 500, double the size. And as you can see, it's starting to cut out the wall while leaving all the objects and things intact. I'm not sure why I came up with this idea, because I was having problems with the... Sorry, I've just had some background noise come in, so I had to stop recording. But we'll continue on. But what I was trying to say is that when I was trying to cut the walls out in the 3D program, I just came up with issues. It's because mostly when you export the Sweet Home 3D model, the walls themselves are just planes. They're not actually a singular object, and I couldn't boolean out the walls, and it was becoming a hassle, and I was scratching my head in what the hell I did. Eventually, I came through and tried it this way, and I'm pretty sure this is the same way that I've done it the first time. Like I said, it's been 3 years, so how I did it or getting the same result doesn't matter how you do it, as long as the results are the same. But this, I find, is more elegant and refined as you get that texture coming in between where you got the brick side and then you got the inside wall color and features. So it worked out fine in the end, and this is how it's going to export, and we don't have to worry about our 3D software doing all this hassles and work, because every different 3D software have different ways of doing things, so it just nullifies one step. So as we continue on, let's go and push this more to the back. And what are we at? We're at 500, so I'll say 900. We'll probably do 1100. And then we click OK. And as we got it here, it is pushing all the way to the back, but it's not showing up in the I don't know if there's a what's going on there. I think it was just a bug, sorry, but just play with a value and it should update properly. I just don't think it was updating in the 3D view for some reason. Oh well, never mind. I think we'll go and just shave off a little bit there. So what I would like to, I'll make a point in a second. Height, sorry, depth, we're going to change to 1200. There, I think that's yeah, fine. If you move this, and this is why I'm actually changing the parameters from the box here, because if you move it, it'll snap and it'll reset and try to find a wall and all that. So that's why I suggest after you've initially placed it, then you change the values through the properties. That way you don't have to worry about it re-snapping and screwing up all your values that you've already entered. So now that's that done, we can export that and then work with our 3D software. I just want to make sure. I think it can come down a little bit. So what I did 35 for that, but anyway, I'll do probably 25. And it looks a bit more. Yeah, I think that looks all right. So about 25 elevation. Again, this is your design. You choose what values work for you. But I think that looks fine for me. So the other point I'd like to note is that if you got a floor plan like mine, I had to cut it out twice because you don't want to cut out this wall here and so forth. So what I did is one box to cut out this area, then do another box to cut out that area. So you can use two of the invisible boxes and windows. So let's go to export to OBJ format. Again, I'll save this as a floor plan tutorial and export all. Another thing to note, if you want, you can remove your windows and even, actually no, leave the doors. Just you can remove the windows that are on the invisible side because they're not actually relevant to the outcome or the render. So you can do it here or you can do it in your 3D program. It doesn't really matter. It just whatever suits your flow. So now that I've exported that, we'll go to 3D Max. I'm going to go to a new, don't save. Okay, so let's go in, and I'm sure we're going to have a problem here, but that's all right because I want to show you a workaround. So let's go to import, find your project, and find your OBJ that you just exported. And here we got all the objects that's going to be imported that Sweet Home 3D has generated. So leave everything as the default and click import. And we got error invalid vertex index. Now I find that this is a problem with 3D Max prior to 2020 version. I've got the 2017 version installed. So if you have the 2020 version or a different software and you can import, that's great. But for me, I had to find a workaround. And to do that, I converted it to an FBX format. So let's do a OBJ to FBX converter. Just use an online tool. It takes a couple of seconds. And we'll use that one, that's fine. Then go to your object, import it. It says it's missing a MTL. What I find actually is better if you get rid of that. Then you got your MTL and OBJ, and we'll grab the JPEGs as well. And what we'll do is copy and drag over to here. And it doesn't seem to be an error, so we'll go to convert now. After that is converted, download and place it in your project folder. So projects. And click save. This time when we go to import, find the FBX. And for simplicity, probably just turn off the animation and cameras, even though there's not any in there, just make sure. And click OK, and hopefully we'll get rid of this box because it's not needed, and we'll get rid of this floor of the box. I'm not actually sure what that is, but anyway, so we'll get rid of those two boxes, and you've got your object now in with the textures, and now we can start fine-tuning everything and adding our light sources. To also begin with, we'll get rid of this top area. I called it the ceiling, but it's relevant here, and we'll remove them. So right now, that gives us, change you to perspective. I hate it when it does that. And default shading. And as you can see, you've got pretty much a very similar model as you did in the Sweet Home 3D. It's just that conversion can sometimes change parameters and screw up some of the actual details, but this actually looks quite good. If you do have problems, you can come in and just, tweak things, go into whatever you need to, and, change it around the vertices. You can do what's needed just to make it look respectable. So as we look at the wall on the outside, see how you got the wall now? It's the outside bricks are just don't look right. So what we're going to do is fix that first. And to do that, we are going to grab the wall and we're going to click attach and grab all the outside walls. So we're going to fix up the mapping of the texture. So now that they're all attached, we can simply add in a modifier. And we're going to do unwrap. No, sorry, we don't want to unwrap. Leave that one. We want UVW map. And as you can see, it's still a bit messy. We're going to fix that up by going into a box. We'll use the back as a reference, that way we can see a bit better. And we're going to change these values, the length and width. To make it look as we initially intended. So the back part still will change alignment to Y. Then we'll change the values again. So play around with these settings. Eventually you'll get the outcome you're after. A bit squished still, so we'll go width a bit more. So I reckon about 600. I'm going to do length 600. Height, probably a bit smaller. And I think that looks quite, that looks fine, but at least the main issue is really what you're going to see in camera, and that will be on this side. So you're not going to worry too much about the back. Now, from here, what we should do is probably start setting up our camera. So go to cameras, add a new camera, and we're going to do a target camera. And place it anywhere. And get the target looking at the home. So that looks fine. Then we're going to raise the camera up. I want to change view for this, and I'm going to put this as the camera so we can see what we're looking at. So we'll raise it a bit more and bring it out. You can also move it here if you need. Probably just about there, I think. And raised. Probably a bit high. Again, it's up to you how you want your floor plan to look. Just remember, try to get everything in view so when you render, you don't have any cut-off areas like you do down here. So we'll just move that down a bit, and that looks fine. What we like to do as well is change this. It's up to you if you want to, but to change it to an orthographic projection, which will give it the RTS look, which I call the real-time strategy look, that you'll find in pretty much every strategy game. And they use this because it keeps things even. I'm not sure of the technicalities behind the actual wording for it, but it gives it a leveled out view. Whereas if you don't have that turned on, you have the depth more stretched depending on how far away it is, and you don't get a leveled render. So keep it to orthographic, and it keeps it all 3D still. It's just a bit more flat and level. That's pretty much how I prefer it. As you will see on here, it just makes everything the same size and easier to access. You can start off by doing a quick render if you want. We'll just do one now. If we go into render, I'll start with a scanline render, but I actually prefer V-Ray, so I'll go change to V-Ray after, but choose whatever renderer you prefer. Make sure it's selected on camera. I'm going to lock it to that. Click on render. And the following object require map coordinates. I'm not really interested right now. And there you go. So when you're rendering and you're pretty much starting out before your final render, try to keep your output size low and all the other values, just so you can get a quicker render. Otherwise, you'll be waiting a long time if you're trying to process a, let's say, a 1920 by 1080 high definition size, as it has to render each pixel. And that's actually how I was doing it when I was making it a while ago. But, it was taking up a lot of time, but yeah, you just deal with it after a while. So what I'm going to do is show you in my V-Ray setup. Let's start off with a light. We're going to start off with one light, and we're going to make that. I'll change mine to a V-Ray. You can change yours to a photometric or whatever you prefer. But with the V-Ray light, let's change you to top. And I'm going to bring that out here. And I call this, it's not really an outside light, it's just a illuminate the actual details when there are no lights on, because you still want a little bit of light coming in. Otherwise, it's just going to be pitch black. So as we go there, raise it up. Don't know why you're not straight, because you won't. Okay. So we'll raise that up. And that's just our overhead light. And now we can go and do another render. And this time I'm going to change mine to V-Ray. Don't know why that changed, but whatever. Now, this is where you're going to have to start playing around with some values and get rid of all that exposure and other things. But you notice that I'm using V-Ray, and it's actually taking a lot longer to process than it would scanline. You also notice the actual light, or the object light itself, is covering up. That's because they determine that the light source is a object itself. So we're going to have to make that invisible, which I'll show you in a sec. We are going to cancel that because it's taking a bit too long. Now, once we go in here, we're going to change the properties and we're going to go to options and make it invisible. I also want to change the exposure. Now, you can do that multiple ways. You can either tone down the multiplier, which I think is probably better off for this situation. So we'll change the multiplier to 9. Do another quick render. Exposure is still a bit too high. I think I know why as well. Okay, so we'll stop that. Go to rendering, we'll go to environment. Exposure control, I'm going to change this to a V-Ray exposure control. Render preview. Photographics, you can change your shutter speed, and as you know your photography, you can play with these. 110 seems a bit low. I'm going to change that to 600. So higher shutter speed is what we want. Oh well, that looks a bit better, I think. Bit more rich in detail, bit more darker in some areas. Again, this light source is going to be a lot less intensive than what it is at the moment because we only just want this to light it up a little bit. So we'll stop that. And the other thing is how close the actual light source is to the object can also affect the intensity. So bringing it up a bit can also change the outcome. I was wondering where that went. And we don't want left. I don't know why it keeps changing. Change it back to camera. And as you can see, it got a bit darker. Just because we brought the light source up a bit. But right now, we're not going to worry too much about that. We'll fine-tune everything once we're finished, and you can fine-tune to your liking, to your own personal preference. So leave that out for now. What you can do as well, and what I also suggest is in your software, if you've got layers or some kind of grouping mechanism, I would start by sorting out all your layers and cleaning up everything just so that you can have quicker access. So I'm going to create a layer, call that structure. Then inside I want, it's going to be very light, create another layer. I want to call that, we'll call that walls. And create another one. Call that doors. And again, create layer, and then we'll call this, bring that back up to structure. We'll call this windows. And what you want to do is grab all those, let's say walls, and we're going to move that into the walls layer. This just makes everything a lot more easier to work with. So once we've got walls in there, we can turn that off, and as you can see, all the walls disappeared. Now let's turn that back on and we're going to find all the doors. I'm going to change this to larger view. And let's say we'll grab that. The problem with this is that it's harder to nail down what's the door and what's not, especially if you're using windows as doors as well, which I actually did, because for a sliding door, that's just a window actually. But to help us, we can get rid of the walls. At least that will give us a bit of a selectable option. And go through, grab all the doors. This can be time consuming, but it'll also make life easier later on. So just grab all the door parts. Oops. And we'll start off by moving them into doors now. So let's go add to selection, new parent, pick doors, and then we're going to hide it. That way, when we're adding new stuff to the doors, we can actually find out what's not been added. The hinges, so as you can see, all these objects are a bunch of mini objects and they can get tedious, but to make life a little bit easier, what we can do is add another layer, create layer. We'll call this one rooms. Place rooms in structure. And this one's easy to find because it'll just be named room. Add selection. Place it in rooms, and we're going to turn off rooms. Now this, we can actually start clicking and drag, which is a lot better. Just be careful that you don't accidentally click behind. Oops, wrong one. Move your camera around just so you can get easier access without clicking something in behind it. See, thing I accidentally clicked that, which I don't want, so we'll get rid of that. Can even be easier if you just go top view or looking down like a bird's eye view and click and drag that way. Now that we got all them in, as you'll notice, even though I'm doing doors, you'll see window frame, but the window frame is basically because I've got the window as that door that I mentioned earlier. So we'll put that into doors. And I've got one more here. And that's everything. You can see there's no doors. We can turn them back on simply by clicking there. We can turn on our walls and our floors, also known as rooms. So now if we go doors, you can see we've got all the doors cut out and no longer in the way. So what I've done, I've skipped ahead and placed everything into groups or layers, whatever you want to call them. So now we got walls, which I can turn on and off, windows on and off, and anything in the master bedroom, lounge, laundry, kitchen. I can even turn them all off in one hit or singularly. Bathroom and dining. So this is the time where we need to start doing the little touch-ups and fixing up those oddities that we're seeing, like this window wall is not what we need at the moment. If you were in Sweet Home and you actually removed it prior to exporting, because you wouldn't really have your window showing there anyway, then this won't be as much of an issue. But while we're here and it is an issue, what we'll do is we'll click on that. We'll make that an editable poly. And we are going to just grab the faces and we'll delete that. Not sure why I'm not able to click there. So instead we'll get I don't think that back part is a part of the wall for some reason. So we'll deselect that. Okay, it's a part of the inside wall, that's why we couldn't select it. So with that selected, we'll change that to an editable poly. And we can, again, just delete the vertices, however you want to delete them, and just delete like that. So now, we turn on everything again. Windows. What you can do, and we'll say create a layer in Windows. I will honestly say I'm not a huge fan of 3D Max layer window, and yeah, it just feels so clumsy. Okay, add pygmy parent. And what we'll do is, before we go there, we'll turn off the walls and rooms for a second. We'll grab these two windows, and we're going to put that in layer 1. And we're going to call this hidden windows. So now we can turn that off, show our walls. We're going to keep our doors off. I don't want doors to show. I mean, you can keep those ones at the back. It's entirely up to you. Whereas the doors. And but remove the ones that are in the way. I also find, sorry, I'm just trying to, yep, no, that's fine. I also find some things that I added just wouldn't look right for a floor plan view for something that you're just trying to use as a panel. So things like these curtains I'd probably remove, but I added them initially because I felt it's a item in the home that's normally a feature that you'd show. But these kind of things I would end up just deleting. So we'll go and turn everything off. And this is why I like to group things, because now that I can just click on these items, I can easily select without worrying about anything behind it again selected. And I'm just going to delete that. We don't need it. And then you also find some other oddities in regards to the furniture where it didn't actually get the full object model properly. So your best bet is to either fix it up manually or just go onto a website, download a model, which I'll actually show now. So let's say we're going to, let's say a chair model. 3D model. and just look around. You Google and just go into different sites just to find what you're after, and even some of your items in your home. And if you find something, some are paid, some are free. Generally, I just target the free ones. I'm not after perfection in any way whatsoever. So I found something that should do nicely. So I'll download that one. You can choose a format. I might choose the max format. Although probably should have done. Actually, what I'll do object obj. And I'm just going to create a new folder and do these models. And save that. Don't need to keep the raw after we've extracted it. Now, we'll go back in and let's go to import. Let's go to models, all formats, and we're going to get our chair. Keep everything as they are. Now, this is another issue I find, is that you don't always get the object coming in properly. In fact, this object didn't even come in at all, unless I imported it into something that's hidden, which I did. So I'm going to put you in structure for now. There you go. So what we're going to do is rotate. Now, there's an issue with their exporting, and there's no material that's come with it for some reason. So change that to 90. And change it here, just so we get a perfect 90-degree rotation. But that's no matter, because I want to show you anyway about changing the material. So we're going to remove this chair. Just make sure nothing behind it was grabbed. And we're going to place that where the other one was. I want to see the walls just so I know I'm going to place it in the right spot. Move it over. Now, obviously, it's a bit too big, so we'll go scale. Probably still a bit too big. Sometimes it helps using the other views just to make sure it's aligned properly. I mean, yeah, that would do. I'm not too fast. If this was my own home, like I'd done, I'd probably spend a bit more time on it, as you would do for your own. We'll rotate that around. And we'll bring that back to where it was previously. And that's just simply adding and, fine-tuning your home layout, floor plan, just to add extra objects. And even devices, say if you want a Roborock vacuum or a Dyson cooler or something, you can find a model similar to those, or, search around the web for 3D models and just add them in, like I have done with a few of my things. You got the Dyson heating and cooling, and TVs, and just, little minor features here and there. So with that done, we're going to give this a bit of a wood look. So we'll open our material editor. And at this point, you just play around. If you're good with materials, and you can even download them if you want as well, then, this is a neat way of spicing things up a bit. So we can click on those legs. We're going to assign to selection. Now we've got wooden legs. And, I don't want that kind of look for... it's all right. I'm not too fussed. But, yeah, so the seat can be a bit white, like it is in the display. So we'll assign this first. I'm going to grab you, and we're going to assign that to both of them. And we can, change it as we go and see the result. Then if you're really into it, you can go in changing all kinds of parameters. I mean, the material editor is so in-depth that you just can't skim over it in one video. But, that looks fine for just something simple and just to show the basics for this tutorial. Now, with all that done, I think we can start looking at our light sources. And what I'm going to suggest is we're going to change this animation with the amount of light sources that we got. So let's say if we have 1 room, 2 room, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then maybe a lamp. So we're going to probably just change this to about 15. We'll give it 18, just to give a bit of headroom. So 18 frames. And what we want to do is, for every frame, a light source will be on and another light source will be off. All the others will be off. And I choose to do this way because it'll make exporting a lot simpler and more streamlined. So let's go and add our light sources. I'm going to have one for each room and probably one for this lamp up here. And even probably one for that lamp. So depending on what you're choosing, you can use photometric or V-Ray. I'm going to stick with V-Ray because my rendering is going to be in V-Ray, and it's best to use whatever your renderer is using. So I'm going to go in and add one for the laundry. I can't see that because this is another thing about the layers. Just make sure that you're working with the one that you're using at the time. So we're going to go to lights. I'll create a lights layer. And we are going to change this to a sphere. I'm going to raise that up. It's a bit big, so we're going to bring down the radius. And just put it in the center of the room. Probably a bit higher to where the ceiling is, but not above the ceiling because we're going to block that off soon. So while we've done that, we want to do, I've actually turned off the other one, which is the top down, so that won't render once we have that invisible. So if we do a render now, I'll stop that because because invisible is still showing anyway. But what I do want to do is also turn on the room floors. And we're going to get rid of the door. So we're going to start making this look a bit more how we want it to look in the final result. Now with top down, we'll keep top down on, but we're going to change the multiplier to 0. And again, it's rendering the perspective for some reason, so we're going to change that back to the camera. It's actually rendering, believe it or not. And you'll notice it's not as bright as you'd expect it to be. And there's actually a couple of reasons behind that. One, we probably don't have the multiplier on high enough. But the other reason is because light escapes. It's not bouncing off of anything. So if we go back, we're going to minimize that. Now we can raise the multiplier, but before you do that, you want to make your environment look natural before you start playing around with the other values. Now what we want to do is try to trap that light within the confined areas and create virtual walls. So to do that, we'll go into the top view and we'll hide things that we don't need at the moment. So get rid of rooms. Everything else is fine. Keep the walls there. And I created a helpers layer. And what we'll do, we'll go to shapes, splines, and we're going to start with a line. Now the idea is to trace over the wall. And to make this a bit simpler, we put on snapping. If you right click, you can actually turn on edge and segment snapping, which is what we're going to need, and probably turn off the others so it doesn't snap to anything else. Now with that on, if we create a line there, we go down, actually we'll go do the outside first. So we'll go and create another line, hold down shift to keep it straight, then click in between the middle between the bricks and the wall there, and just do that all the way on the outside. And what we're going to do here, we're also going to go across the front door because we don't want light escaping out the front door. And move over. Follow it up. And you should be able to connect it now. If we turn off walls. Close spline, yes. And if we turn off the walls, we got the outline of the actual floor plan. But we can turn them back on walls, and we need to go back in and do the same for the inside of the walls. So I'm going to turn on snapping now, which is going to snap to the splines. You can see it's snapping to the actual walls as well. So we're going to freeze the walls. And that way, if we go create a line, it will snap to the line that we've already made. We don't want any gaps, otherwise the light will bleed through, and that's not a desirable effect. So continue tracing around, right to the edges, then right click once you've done that. Then you can go ahead and continue creating new lines, or you can go into the modify tab and create a new line there, which will maintain the actual line with the object. But for this, I'll just continue doing new lines, then we'll attach them after we've finished. So if we create a line here, got the outline of the walls. Let's turn that back on, make sure I got it all. We'll go to any of the lines, go to line, the first one that we created, and we'll just attach all the ones that we created new ones for. And that one now has created a single object for all these lines. So now that that's done, just make sure your line is also flat. And we are going to bring it down a tad. So let's go and bring it down to Z to about, we'll do -2. Actually, I want to get out of that view and go back to perspective. And that brings it down below the actual floor a little bit. Probably do a bit more actually, about, I just realized we're doing millimeters, so 50 millimeters should do. And then we'll turn on our walls again. You can see it's a bit below. The idea is just not to let any light escape. With that done, we are going to extrude it. So find a modifier, extrude, then raise. I think it's because I closed the spline, which isn't what I wanted to do. Okay, so what we're going to do, go back into extrude, face extrude. I'm not sure what face extrude now. I don't think, no. Let's go back into extrude. And we're going to extrude the path. That's what we wanted. Okay, so just make sure you put it onto, if we do mesh, it will, because we closed it, it's going to fill it up from what's within. So if we go patch, and we get a desired result. So bring it all the way up till, find that a bit odd because that's actually off as well. If we go to nodes. Okay, I know what happened. Because snapping is on, it actually moves in a weird manner that it's just very frustrating. So what you gonna have to realign that a little bit. Go back, go to top, and I'll select the line. I'm going to move it and turn off snapping this time. I'm going to move it back over to where it should be in the center. The snapping seems to add some weird effect when you try to move an object. So try to remember to turn that off when you finish using it. Now the line seems to be back where it should be and below. Because when I had snapping on and I dragged the Z, it pushes it on the X and Y axis and all that as well. So that's why we got that problem. Now we can go and choose extrude. And this time we're going to cap both of those off. Raise. That's better. And get it to match around the height of the wall, original wall. So around about there will be sufficient. And to top it off, we'll add a shell. Just a little shell, just to kind of stop any artifacts and issues with the light leading through different corners and gaps. I think with that one, you can fix these lines up if you want by going into segment and turn off the walls. And you can click on a segment and move them over, or do as you wish, just to be able to fix up different areas. But I won't be too worried about things like that, how they're a bit crooked off. And the same goes with that. And I think that's to do with the shell and the way that it's thinking that it needs to, which way it's going to come out. But the shell is going to be small. That's not going to make a difference. I'm going to do 2 millimeters. I'll drag it down then. About 2. And turn back on the wall. Now it's upside down. You won't even notice that it's got a gap anyway. So with that done, let's change our material, give the wall a white kind of, or whatever the color of the wall is, because that's the reflection that we wish to achieve once we got the lights reflecting from it or bouncing off it. So I'm going to go and add a material to the wall, just a white material. Then do a quick render just to see how we're going. Turn back on the rooms. And we'll turn on the lights. Not sure, it looks a bit more grey than it does white, but it will still come out white. And now you can see the actual light is more trapped and giving it a bit more of an intense feeling. So that looks good so far. Now we'll stop that. But what we don't want to happen is to have those walls actually showing, but we want it to calculate that light and how it should be responding as if there was a wall there. So we'll right click and go to Object Properties. And we're going to change this to Visible to Camera, turn that off. And for our sake, we're going to do See-Through and Display as box, so we can, it's not there in the way what we're doing our designs. So now if we go do a render, you can see how it's now being trapped, confined within that area. The light is bouncing around, giving it a bit more of the intense effect, and bleeding out to the other rooms and hallway here. And it doesn't go into the bedroom, and you don't see the wall, the outline that we just made. So to do our last trapment, as we'll call it, we're going to add a roof. And that's just simply by adding a plane. Doesn't matter how big it is, just as long as it covers the whole home area. And we'll raise that to the top, around about where before the it goes past the wall, the top of the wall. And we'll open the materials editor, add the white material to it, and we'll normalize as well. So give it a normal. Now when we do the same thing, we'll go to Object Properties, and we don't want this to be visible to camera, and we want to see through as well. And we'll do another render. Now the light isn't escaping just straight up in the air, and it's actually bouncing around as it generally does in home or confined areas. So now you can see the light has given it a bit more of an effect into the other rooms nearby. You can see how, wait for it to render a bit because it should show you more of a beam coming into where the light is in direct contact. Then it fade off. You can see it here as well, how it's gone into the master bedroom, bouncing off this wall. You get a bit more of a beam on the entrance or where the light is originally sourced, then fade off and gone a bit darker. Now, nothing has to be perfect either, because you can still go into Photoshop after and touch up different areas, and what you don't want in that light source, like maybe you don't want this back bit, you can just paint that black, and once you go through the blend mode, it won't show up. So once we've done that, we just do the same thing to each room. So we're going to stop and grab that light and the lounge, and we're just going to copy it over. Hold down Shift and drag over, and we're going to call this kids bedroom. Make that a copy, then place in, and then do the same for for each room. We'll just add that extra one for the lamp, in case you want to be able to have some effect or result from a lamp. Might even bring down the radius on that one, so the radius can come down a bit. Now, if we do a render, I think it might be a bit intensive. We'll see how it comes out. It's doing a wrong, no, I thought it was doing a wrong render, but it says full screen orthographic here, but it's meant to be doing the camera, which it is. So you can see in different rooms, it is a lot brighter. And this is where you're going to have to start playing with those values. So as we go in and go and stop that, and we go for the kids' bedroom, and we'll change the multiplier to probably 30. And the laundry was pretty high, so we'll change that to about 30 as well. Still seems a bit bright. It's almost as if it didn't really change much, did it? All right, we'll stop. Yeah, we'll stop that. Oh, sorry, I did laundry. Don't know why. Wasn't actually looking properly. So kids' bedroom, down to 30. We might even bring that down more now, 20. And laundry, about 20. Master bedroom, bring that down to about 20. Bathroom, again 20. And the kitchen can come down a bit as well. All right. looking a bit better. It's not as exposed. Still a lot of exposure in the kids' bedroom. Which again, you're going to just have to play with these values, especially the multiplier. Bring it down and up just till it finally comes out natural. And once you've got the lighting sources to a natural look, I might stop that now, it's taken a while. And then you want to do something that makes your life simpler. And we'll do that by the animation reel. And what we want to do, we're going to start with the top down, the outside light. What we'll do is go from top to bottom, just to make our lives easier. Now, there's no point animating the on and off, or the on toggle, because it just doesn't animate. So we keep the on toggle. But we're going to do auto key. And for the first frame, we want to set the top down light to what we want it to be set as. Then for the next frame, we want to set it back to 0. Now we'll go to the lamp and we'll make sure that the first frame now is set to 0. I don't think that changed it. I don't know why. We'll set a keyframe there. It's not changing anything. And we change that. Okay, now it is. I don't think it needs to be that bright for the lamp, so we'll change that to 25. Then back down to 0. So master bedroom now. We want it to start off at 0, so always the first frame to 0. Then we're going to do frame 1 to 0 as well, because actually I'll show you if we go to delete that key. If we go here and we go straight to the multiplier that we wanted, which I can't remember what it was, probably 22 will do for now. Then you'll see in frame 1 it animates to that value, which we don't want to happen. We want it to be completely off in all the other frames. So we go back to 0, frame 1, and then we put it back to 0 on frame 3. So it's almost like a toggle on, then back off. Same with the lounge. This one will be frame 4. So start off at 0. And then we go to frame 3 and we'll give it put it back to 0 so there's no changes in between. And we'll put this to whatever it was, 55, I don't know. And again, back to 0. So do that, continue along for each of your light sources. Now that if you've done all of those for each frame, as you can see, it steps up 1 by each light that we choose. Then it's just a matter of rendering each one now. So if you accidentally make a mistake, you can always click and drag these frames over. So if you have any overlapping, you can fix that up just simply by dragging them over and moving it over one. So let's start with the laundry. That will be toggled on frame 4. So if we go over, we can see there's no multiplier. Then it's up to 20 and back to 0. We're going to render that frame. So in your render setup, we're going to do single output and click on render, and it'll render the frame that you're actually on at the time. Now, as you can see, the light source is in the laundry and bleeding out to adjacent rooms. So go through each one. So all you have to do now is just change the values a tiny bit just to make it look natural for you. Then go to the next frame and do the same again, then just render. And once you've done all of those and you have it the way that you are pleased, then you can simply do a final render and you can do your range for your lights. So if you go to the last frame would be 9. So if you do 0 to 9, you'll have an image for every room. So if we go there, 9, and then you change your width and height to also match what you're trying to achieve on Home Assistant, which I generally say 1920 by 1080 is normal. It also depends on what you're going to have your panel on or what you're going to be using, what device you're going to be using primarily for your floor plan. But high def HD is generally what I aim for, and that's 1920 by 1080. I'll do that now. Just know that this can take a long time, so you could probably leave it going on overnight. It all depends on how you go about it. And what you want to do as well is choose your output. So we're going to save that into the project. We'll call them renders. And save type we want as a PNG. That way it keeps the transparencies. And we'll just call this as well floor plan. We'll click save and we'll choose 24-bit alpha channel, make sure that's turned on and click OK. So now when we click on render, and you go to your renders, have to wait till the first one's finished. Actually, I might stop this because there's an issue that we are going to face, or you're going to face with the first frame. So if we go stop, you'll notice that we've got a ceiling now, so it's actually blocking the light from coming in. So what you want to do instead is render from frame 1 to skip that initial render or the initial top-down light render. And then once this is finished, we'll go back to it, hide that roof, that plane, then render it singularly. So we'll render the other light sources for now. All right, so my laptop has just finished rendering the last frame. When you go into your folders and look at your renders, you'll see that each frame has been saved as a PNG with the frame number at the end of the file name. So that would be frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, 4, and so on. But we don't have frame 0 yet, and that's because we have to just change one thing. So before we render frame 0, we are just going to hide the plane so it's no longer visible. And then we are going to go back to our render setup. And we're going to go to single. Make sure all the options are the same and make sure render hidden geometry is turned off as well. Hang on, and also make sure you're on the right frame as well. So go back to frame 0 and do a render. Now that is a bit way too exposed, so I'm going to turn down the multiplier for the top light, and I'm going to probably go down to 33. Give that a go. Not sure if anything changed. It is. It's still way too bright, so we're going to notch it down even more. Even go down to 15. See how that goes. I hope I'm changing the right one. There's a possibility I'm not. No, it's top down. A little bit better, but I still wanted to make it a little bit more darker. Just want to see if these bricks are coming out as well. Don't seem to be that much. So I'm going to stop that render and bring down the multiplier. And I want it to be wider. So stretch it out, stretch that out. You can even tilt it a bit if you want, if you just want it to come in sideways. So what I might do, just to give it a bit more of an edge. Give that a render. Also, just be aware about auto key, because that can also change the parameters when you're moving it and transforming it. So just be careful about that. But seeing as I put it on the side more, you'll notice that the bricks are more visible and has some light coming to it. So even though that is actually quite surprising, it also depends on what units you use as well. Image can actually doesn't have the same relevance as say wattage or luminous. So the multiplier will be a lot different to the actual other units that's available. But we'll go to 2 and see how that goes. I think that's a lot better now. Something you can work with. The lighting around the areas look even. Nothing looks too exposed. So I think I'm quite happy with that one. You'll notice that I've the top up here has been cut off. You want to be careful with that, because once you change your resolution and your rendering, it won't actually be the same as if you're looking at it from your display port on the actual 3D program. So you might have to tweak your camera a tiny bit just to make sure it all fits within that resolution. So we'll let this finish rendering. There are tiny bits of dark areas, but I mean, that's completely fine. Just remember that whatever is darker, or whatever is lighter, sorry, will overlap the darker areas. So when the light is switched on, you're going to get that becoming the dominant image or part of the image. So that's been rendered, and that, I don't think it's, yes, it did. And that's saved as a floor plan without any of the digits at the end. The reason being because we selected single and not arrange, so it doesn't bother adding the frame number to the end. So lastly, I want to open that with Photoshop. And just do minor tweaks just to give it that kind of final touch, to say. You also notice in my images. Some are a bit too dark, some are a bit bland. I find that one's quite nice. That came out quite well. That one came out okay. I mean, I like that as well. You can see how it just bleeds off there. That was the kitchen light. Now this one, I'm still not happy with. That was just still too, it's just too bright. So I'd probably tweak that a little bit, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to go back and tweak those values. Here we got the living room light, dining, and bathroom. Now with this, you can give yourself a bit more headroom. So what I'm going to do is canvas the size, anchor it upwards a bit. And I'm going to say 100 pixels, probably too much. I'm going to do about 85 pixels. So you've got a bit of headroom down the bottom here, because what I want to do is change a bit of these, gives a bit of a natural feel, especially for your layout. I mean, let's go to hue and saturation. For mine, I tried to go with that background a bit, give it a bit of a blue tint, and just give it that kind of blend to the background in a way. So following that as a format, I'd end up taking down the saturation, probably darker, take about a little bit more saturation, because you don't want colors really, especially in the night kind of view. I mean, you have to take this as a dark image, but you still want to be able to differentiate objects and the rooms and so forth. So we can bring that down a bit. One thing I do want to point out, which I didn't before, sorry, is you'll notice there's a gap here. You want to clean that up. And to do that, I mean, this is a good way to find the imperfections when you zoom in on the image itself. So in 3D Max, what that would be, there will be a tiny gap there, and you can just see it. So click on one, and we'll click on the edge selector, and we'll just get the move tool, just move it over. Make sure it's over. I don't like doing it that way, just bear with me. Just so they're touching, but a little bit over is okay. There's times where renders have real issues if something is on the exact same level that they're overlapping, and it creates weird artifacts. So try to avoid overlapping, but it's okay to do a little bit overlapping. But just try to get that over like that, and you eliminate that problem. So now, what I do like to do is also add a photo filter. And this gives it just like a coat over, a tint. And for my purposes, I did blue, like a cooling kind of filter. Probably a bit too harsh. Just go through each one, play with the settings. But we don't want it so intense. We just want to bring that down and give it a bit of a touch of tint to it. I mean, if I turn off these and that, you can, I mean, that one I didn't add too much of it. I've opened the wrong program, sorry. Or you can just add to the color itself and just pick your color, which you can also try to just get the color of your background and copy the same value. That way you got the tint of that background, which gives it more of a blending effect. Not sure if that started. I don't know what's going on there, but so that's what I'd, you know, for the purpose of this video, I personally, I tweak and tweak and tweak till, till I'm dead asleep. It's just something that I continue working on. I have this kind of perfectionist attribute that it's not that you are perfect, it's just that nothing ever is perfect. So you continue to just keep modifying, things just don't look right. And eventually I come up with something I'm okay with, but I'm still indecisive about a lot of things. I mean, this thing I added just yesterday about taking the bins out, I'm still not quite happy with it. I'm not sure what I want to do with it, but I do want something there. But that's my own personal problems when it comes to perfection and how I want things to look. For you, it can be a different story. What we can also do, I'm not sure if my computer's playing up, it is. What I did is add a little bit of a blending. Sorry, the computer's going a bit sluggish at the moment because I accidentally opened up 2 of these Fusion and they chew up RAM and CPU. And what I do is drop a shadow and just put that up so the shadow is coming down like that. And as you can see the shadow is kind of like a base, a flat base for the plan itself. Gives it a bit of depth. You can see here how I've done it. And again, just play with those values so you get it right. What I also did is you'll notice the shadow comes in through these areas where the transparency is. So to get rid of that, I'll make a copy. I'll get rid of the blending effect. We can just drag that to the trash bit. And you can go in and add a mask. Just paint over it. The problem with this at the moment is because the mask is also affecting the effects layer. So you go back to blending options and from memory, you click on layer mask hides effect. If we turn that off, you don't get that shadow effect on it. So on the areas that you didn't mask out. So continue just to paint over that area. Then once you're done, export that, save it as a PNG, and move them all over to your local folder. Your, what's it called, Home Assistant www folder, which is also a reference to the local relative path, and create, structure it however you're happy with it. Then follow on from the tutorials from before and you'll have all of these in place and having something similar to what I have done. Just want to make sure I haven't skipped anything before I cut this video off. Like I said, just remember to keep your structure neat and tidy and easily accessible. And other than that, I think, it's all good. You can always change the materials for different objects that came in from Sweet Home 3D. I mean, if we click on this and I click on the picker and I want to change the sink basin, then I can, grab that and just change the values a bit, make it more shinier. And you can see it reflecting, the updating there. Self-illumination, I mean, there's so much that you can do in the 3D programs that you just have to play around with the settings. And same with the rendering. I mean, the rendering itself is just so many settings in there that you can change just to get different kind of looks. But what I'd be mostly concerned with is making sure your noise threshold, if you're getting too much noise, just to bring that down a bit. And, just go through and just hover over and you'll get a little bit of description of what each setting does. And just do quick small renders first. So probably 320, but probably a little bit bigger. 640 by 480, just to get a little bit of a insight to how it's truly going to render. Then do your big render in the end. Well, I hope this has all been helpful for you guys, and thank you for tuning in, and or subscribe to my channel if it's been helpful. Thanks.